Well, welcome, church family and friends. We got another podcast here with some missionaries that we've supported for a number of years now, and David and Adriana Petro. Am I saying that right?
That's right.
Yeah, all right. And so we want to get into a few things today. We want to talk about missions with them and kind of what is missions. And what I was just telling David and Adriana, that we get to have conversations as pastors with our missionaries and get to know them, and it's just usually a really nice time together. And I just think, man, the church should hear what we're talking about and get to know them better in that way, because 10% of our giving goes to missions. And so people are giving and supporting and praying. And we just want our church, I think the church should know what you guys are doing and what missionaries are doing. And so we really appreciate you guys coming on and spending some time with us. So hopefully this is helpful for the church and encouraging for you guys as well. So we want to talk about their journey, what's led them into becoming missionaries. Like, why would somebody go live in the jungle, right? So that's a pretty, and you guys seem sane, right? So, and then why, what happened? How did the Lord use you guys in the Philippines? And then I know you guys came home and then worked in a church, kind of a replant up in Sierraville. So we want to talk about that. And that's where you've been the last 5 years. And now the Lord's led you to another mission and another calling. And so we want to get to know what's going on with that. So let's start with you guys, your story. How'd you guys meet?
Go ahead.
I was working at Hyatt Regency, going to college, Cal State Long Beach. And I was working in the front desk, and David was hired. And so I met him the one day, and we kind of looked at each other. I guess. There we go. That's how it started. It's a good story.
Yeah. So you guys just met at work?
At a job.
On a job.
Yes.
Okay.
That's right.
Were you both believers at the time?
I was not a believer. I'd never heard the gospel.
Okay.
I grew up as a Catholic.
Okay.
First time I ever heard the gospel was through David.
Okay.
And he shared the gospel, and that because he asked me a simple question: is what would happen to you if you died today? And I said, of course I'm going to go to heaven. I'm a good person. Mm-hmm. And he said, actually, and so he gave me the gospel, and I told him I never heard that before. Wow, you know. So then he left. Eventually, he left me a Bible, and I started reading John 3:16. He said, just start reading the Gospel of John. Okay. And I did. I got to John 3:16, and it just clicked to me.
Yeah.
It just, like the lights went on.
Yeah. So were you going to the Catholic Church at the time, or
No.
Or were you just
No.
Catholic?
It was just school.
Okay.
And that's where our
You went to a Catholic school?
That's where our parents sent us to.
And you never felt like you heard the gospel
No.
in the Catholic school? Okay. Interesting.
No, everything was centered on Mary and focused on her and the saints. We did a lot of rituals. Some months where it's the Station of the Cross, and you go to church. I remember kneeling and standing and kneeling and sitting, and that ritual. And May is the month of centered around worship of Mary. So you have a parade where you have a float that we used to build with all these flowers in worship of Mary, and we paraded down the altar. I was in downtown LA. The archdiocese was right down the street. Cardinal Manning. It was a very rich archdiocese. We had a theater, so we had access to marked. What's that movie that was out with the little boy, Mark Twain's? Anyway, there was a movie. We watched everything. We were taken to Century City in LA.
Okay.
It was a very wealthy archdiocese, so that school benefited a lot from all that.
Okay. Wow. All right. So you guys met, though, back to your story, met at work, and...
Yeah, we met at work. And then...
How long did you date her for?
Not really dated.
Didn't really
we were just friends.
I told her I wasn't going to get involved with her because she wasn't a believer.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Make sure I got this straight.
So he was witnessing.
Yeah.
And then she I decided I was going to go fishing, or no, she said she got saved, so I decided I was going to go fishing, and went and worked in Alaska on a boat way back in the 80s, and we came back and we got engaged, and from there we went to Bible school in Europe. Okay. To Cape Marie Bible School, and then came back and got married. So I guess we were sort of dating. We were engaged over a year and a half maybe. I don't know. It seemed like a long time.
Yeah.
So
All right.
That's how it worked.
Yeah.
But even then, I mean, I knew I wanted to be a missionary, and so I told her, don't expect white picket fence, you know.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that.
What did you think about that?
I guess I didn't know what I was getting into.
She's like, okay.
I was like, all right.
As long as
Sounds
I'm
good
with
to
you,
me.
I'll be happy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
All right.
To her surprise.
Because you grew up in a missionary family.
Right.
Yeah.
My parents were missionaries.
Talk about that a little bit.
My parents were actually missionaries in the Philippines, and I grew up in the Philippines. I was actually born in the Philippines, grew up there.
Were they rural or in the jungle?
Oh, they were in the jungle. They worked in several areas. They were in
Okay.
the jungle, and they worked up in the mountains in another area. And but mostly, I didn't really live with them very much. I actually was in the dorm from first grade.
Okay.
And that was how they did it back in those days. And so I never really learned to speak the language real well.
The dorm would have been like the mission school.
Right, the
Okay.
mission in a dorm and for education.
Okay.
And it was a big missionary kids school. At the time, I think it was the biggest one in the world. And so, and yet, you know, my parents were very active in our lives, and they came out and watched us play sports and whatever activities we were in, and very involved with that. I already saw the needs and sort of knew I wanted to do that eventually, even though I came back to the States and didn't go back till after we were married. Didn't go back for another 10 years.
Okay.
I mean, we didn't leave till I was 28, I believe.
Okay.
28. Yeah, I was 28 before.
So you were in the jungle till you were 18.
Well, no, till I was 8. My parents were there till I was 8, and then we
Okay.
moved into another area.
Okay.
And they were in the higher mountains, but not really jungle.
Okay.
Different group, different language.
Okay. And then just so our church family knows, so Wes and Lori are your parents.
That's right.
And there's kind of this could get complicated. There's a tree there, like a family tree of
Right.
missionaries out of there. Just so kind of, can you help kind of
My sister-
navigate that a little bit for us?
I actually brought my sister, who a lot of people know in this church, Art, and Tammy. Tammy is my sister.
Okay.
And I introduced Tammy to the church here
Okay.
when we got supported, and we came here multiple times. I spoke at the church multiple times.
Right, so Arrogans.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Tammy
so
and
Tammy and Art
Tammy.
Aragon, and then Mike and Leanne Moody also were supported at this church, I believe, at one time.
Yeah.
And they were missionaries in Cambodia. Art and Tammy were missionaries in Bosnia. And since then, we've all come back. But
Okay.
yeah, so we all served on the mission field, some for not very long, and we were there in the Philippines for 25 years.
Yeah. And then what are the churches locally that support the Petros and you guys?
Hessel
Church.
supports us. You guys, my mind's blank. There's a church down in Pacifica that supports us called
Okay.
Seaview Baptist.
Okay.
Help me
San Rosa
out here.
Bible or no?
No.
Okay.
Te amo. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think those are the 3.
Okay.
We've had others, but that no longer support us.
Okay, got it. All right. So missionaries, grew up in a missionary home, 28 years old. When did you guys get married? How old were you when you got married?
24.
24? Okay.
I was 24. Then we spent a year and a half in San Francisco. I actually lived in San Francisco, paid off college debts. Then we went into missionary training.
Okay.
We joined New Tribes Mission, went into missionary training.
And you knew you wanted to go back to the Philippines?
No.
Not yet. Okay.
No. I didn't want to go with the mission we went with.
Okay.
And I didn't want to go back to the Philippines. And that's
Why not? Why wouldn't you want to go with
I thought the mission we went with was legalistic.
Okay.
And they were at the time. But I also thought that, and I didn't want to go back to the Philippines because then you're kind of like, just the whole thing, I'm following my dad type thing.
Yeah.
I wanted to go somewhere else. But we went back with New Tribes for a couple reasons. But the main reason, I liked how they handled their finances. They did really, really well with that. The best I've ever seen, even to this day. And I really liked how they didn't expect you to have a master's or whatever, some sort of Bible degree. If the church approved of you and said you know enough of the Bible, they would take that. And then plus you end up 2 more years in training anyways. So, which is actually pretty legitimate. And so we started in training after we paid off our college debt and stuff, worked in San Francisco, and then we started in training. We're 2 years in New Tribes training. Then we did support raising before we headed overseas. So we were, sort of been in mission since 1987, something 88, something like that.
Yeah. And so just so people can maybe new at church would understand, so you guys go around and raise support, and you have to meet with enough churches to get a certain percentage of support raised.
Most support comes from individuals.
Okay.
It's a rare missionary.
Is that now or was that then? Is the same?
That's pretty much the case.
Okay.
I don't, unless a church picks you up for a very large amount, which is pretty rare. Mm-hmm. Okay. But individuals and churches, they get behind you and, get involved.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Which is nice, and you have the individual contact too. You have.
Right. Because it's important. I mean, that goes a little bit later on, because a lot of people see the church as being, it's the job of the church to support missionaries. No, it's the job of everybody to be involved in missions.
Yeah.
And financially, as well as prayer and stuff.
Yeah. And
it's better if individuals support you in a way, because when they write a check, well, of course, in this day and age, everything is like bank transfer, but then maybe they think to pray for you,
Yeah.
And where the church, it's kind of broad, it's just a different, where you have somebody individual saying, hey, so when we send our prayer letter out, they see it and say, oh, okay, these are the needs or whatever.
Mm-hmm. I just met a couple. We were up in Lake Almanor doing a vacation Bible school up there, and got to know the church up there. It's a really neat church up there. And this one lady, she goes, well, my husband's not here. She was serving and helping because he's retired, but he's driving an 18-wheeler. He's always wanted to drive an 18-wheeler. I'm like, oh, okay. Probably helps financially, to have some extra income. And she goes, no, he does it because we give all the money he makes to missions through driving this 18-wheeler. Like that was just their heart. We want to support this, and this, and storing up some treasure in heaven. Anyway, it was really cool. But just think about people having that heart to support people in missions is pretty awesome.
Yeah. And actually, most missionaries support other missionaries. In fact, I don't know any missionary that doesn't support another missionary. It's just a part of what we do. We're involved also with other missionaries.
That's cool. Yeah. Neat. Okay, so we're going into the Philippines now. So so you weren't going to go there because your dad was there, but now what changed your heart with that, or what happened?
I'll answer this one because she wouldn't have known. But so she didn't know what the Philippines was like. Actually, she did. She worked for United beforehand, so we were able to fly over there for basically free.
Okay.
First class. Wish that would happen again, but whatever. and took her actually to the tribe.
Okay.
And so she saw what it was like over there. But why did we go back? So when I was a couple of different reasons. One was I knew the education was good, that our kids would get a good education.
Okay.
That was a big deal, and in comparison to other schools that didn't have a reputation for missionary kids.
You guys had
schools.
kids at this time now too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, by then we had our first son.
Okay.
And we had two sons. That's right, when we made the decision, correct. And
Adriana's here to correct all of
yes,
that.
she'll do that. And then the second reason, so education was the first reason, and off the top of my head, I can't even remember the second reason. We went over and we actually met the leadership there. And this isn't necessarily, now that we're a little bit experienced, this is not the reason why you go, but we really liked the leadership that we met. They were just really cool people, and they were, come over, we can use you. They recruited us.
Native leadership? Or
no, the missions
okay.
leadership.
Got
I'm
it.
sorry,
Okay.
yeah. And so we wanted to see what that was like, and they were just really upbeat about us. We didn't know later on that, of course, leadership changes all the time. People quit, people leave, people whatever, retire, whatever. And so you can go through good and then bad leadership and then good and so forth. It just constantly changes. But that was the other one that I would say was the big reason. And then the other reason we were with New Tribes is because they didn't have they didn't push you to raise a ton of support.
Okay.
And so they weren't money. They're not based on their fight, such a large focus on money, and that was a big plus for us.
Okay. So you guys get there, you've got 2 kids, get off an airplane. Mm-hmm. Then what?
So Jacob was 2 years old.
Yeah.
And Matthew was 10 months old.
Okay.
We had training, so we were trained to do whatever, whenever, and just hit the pavement running, basically. That's the thing that with New Tribes, we had fantastic training because I remember the word that to this day sticks to our mind. In the training, they said, you need to be flexible. I remember that word. To this day, it works and it helps.
Yeah.
You know, it helps so that you're not discouraged if something doesn't turn out.
Probably helped in Sierraville too. Right?
So, yeah, the Lord just undertook for us.
We went to Tagalog study.
We did 1 year of Tagalog study, so that's the national language of the Philippines, and we wanted to get in right away. So they said, but there's no housing. Well, we wanted to get going with the training, and so we ended up in this little cement bucket flush bathroom with no screens. This little tiny, did it even have a bedroom?
It didn't have any paint.
So,
and one sink. There was
so
one
we're
sink.
like,
There was
and it was
one
behind a body mechanic.
Yeah.
I just remember that. But there was this little neighborhood in the back and all these people, and we thought, oh, okay.
Perfect.
This is it.
Yeah.
So we hired somebody
bucket
to.
flush. What is that?
It's just a toilet.
On a bucket.
No, it's just a regular toilet that you have to bucket flush.
Okay.
You have to pour a water
and
bucket
to get it to go.
to get it to go.
To the river, wherever.
Wherever.
They would have
sewer?
had it.
Okay.
Yeah, sure they did.
Okay.
So, and then we hired somebody to build, to make us some screening for our windows
Okay.
to keep the mosquitoes out.
And hired somebody to make us some bed frames.
And some bed frames. So David struck up a relationship with a bamboo
guy.
Did he even make furniture?
Yeah.
So we had to make a bed for us, like an armoire for us to put like a closet.
Yeah.
And
Out
a
of
crib.
bamboo.
A crib.
Okay.
So he built a crib for our boys. So it was the kids love this little crib. So there's a bed on top and then like a trundle bed underneath that you can pull out, all of bamboo.
Okay.
And so he
It's
designed this for us.
really
It was
cool.
very
I bet
cool.
if we could have brought it to the States, I bet we made bugs.
Yeah,
That thing was
couch
so
and
nice.
yeah. So anyway, so we had this relationship with this guy down the road that made our furniture for us.
Okay. Nice. Okay. So that's where you got going, and so you're more in the city at that point.
Yeah, we're not in Manila. It was about 2 hours south of Manila
Okay.
in another area. So,
Okay.
and we didn't have a vehicle. Everything was public transportation. We weren't supported real well, that's good for us.
Yeah.
It was
we learned
normal
to trust the
though,
Lord.
back
It was,
then.
but that was the
Yeah.
norm, and life was, you didn't have extra money, and that's okay.
Yeah. Were you scared ever?
There?
Yeah.
No.
Anxious? You just felt like God.
We just went for it. I don't know. I don't remember back then that we were.
Well, I mean,
Anxious or anything?
no. I mean, no, not there. No, I would say that's not
Okay.
the case.
Did you see kind of some neat ways God provided as you took steps
Oh,
of faith?
definitely. That little place was a God provision, because if we wouldn't have started our language training at that time, we would have had to wait till
For months.
January or something.
Yeah, for
So what are we
months.
going to do for 2 little kids? So we wanted to get settled in and get
Yeah.
going.
Okay.
And it was great because it was
Yeah.
like right in the barrio, and it was like you didn't have a choice. You walk out and
You
with
have to
people
use your
that don't
language.
speak
Yeah.
English at all, so you don't have a choice. You have
Right.
to learn the language really fast.
And you're Colombian. We
Mm-hmm.
learned that at lunch today. Yeah. So you're in the cartel. So how did it go though with you? Because you're kind of a tall white guy there, right?
Yeah.
Was that awkward to be a different culture? Did that help?
Sure. It is awkward, and you're they
why
had
are
a
you-
term.
why are you
when
here?
they see a Westerner,
Yeah.
and generally it's going to be white, right?
Yeah.
For some reason, they didn't see blacks as being American. They still don't. I'm just like, no, they're American.
Yeah.
But they always separated it. But anyways, they saw a Westerner, and I don't care if you're German or whatever. If you're white, it's times 50.
Yeah.
Because it's $1 to 50 pesos.
Okay.
So they saw you as money.
Okay.
Now you were a source of money. So that was probably a little bit frustrating.
Yeah.
It could be frustrating. Let's put it that way, because people had expectations. But Filipinos are just the nicest. They're so easy to talk to. Honestly, they're just so. You can go out and they will invite you in. You never have to call to make an appointment, which you have to do here. Can I come over? You just go over. Hey, come on in. Let's have some coffee. Sit down, chit chat. They'll feed you right then. I mean, they're the nicest, most hospitable people. We love Filipinos. They're just awesome, awesome people. Great country to be in. So.
When we go to
People are great.
Chile, we took a group to Chile. I told the church, like, it's the country's beautiful. The people are beautiful. The food's, I mean, it's really neat, really neat thing, to go to meet the other countries and cultures. And
Yeah.
you get, it's.
I think it's interesting how poor people seem to be so much more available and hospitable than wealth. I mean, it just seems to be that way. Than wealthier people.
Yeah.
It's just, hey, come on in, let's have some coffee. And if you don't drink coffee before you go to the Philippines, you do walk out drinking sweet coffee.
Okay.
So,
It's probably good.
yeah.
So, okay, so that was your language training, and then what got you then into more of the tribes that you started working with? Or is that the route you took?
No, that is. So once you get done with language and they want you, well, ours was a little bit unusual because we actually ended up being the couple that closed that particular school. But once you get to a proficiency in the language, in Tagalog, the national language, then you go to a tribe. But in the meantime, you've started to survey. And we went to multiple places that needed partners, because generally you work with partners. So we went to an island in the south called Palawan and went and checked out several areas down there. And that's where they were really pushing us to go. But my parents were missionaries in the Dumagats, not in the area we were at, but in a different area way back. And they were there 3 years. And I just remembered the Dumagats, and I wanted to go back to the Dumagats. So I got my dad to come over, and he helped me go survey and back into the Dumagats again. So we're just walking. I didn't know anything about walking. Talk about over carrying on a bag. Oh my goodness. I'm embarrassed looking back now because I didn't know better. But anyways.
You took too much stuff?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got it down to, anyways. So we walked and surveyed the Dumagats, and I came back to our leadership and said, I want to go to Dumagats. Well, they really wanted to fill in teams, and we would be going in by ourselves. And so, but I said, no, this is really where I want to go. So they met and they said, okay, we'll let you go. You seem to be, maybe it'll work out for you type thing. And so that's where we ended up. So that then I went back in and asked them, can we come in? Would you be interested? This is what I'm going to be here to teach the Bible. We'll help out with literacy. We'll help out with medical. Yes, because you don't just walk in and then, hey, we're going to build a house, so forth, so on. And so it all starts there.
Okay.
And then there's a lot of logistics to go through before.
Were there connections with your parents? Were there people that you already knew within the community, or was it totally?
Loosely,
there was
yes.
one guy, right?
There was a couple guys that knew my dad from the old days. Because you're talking 1993, I believe, and they left that area in 1967.
Whoa.
So you're talking the old people, but how many people speak the language? How many Westerners speak that language?
Right.
Well, one.
Right.
One man, so they know about him at least. And so even in walking around there, they would know who he was, and he could still speak the language. And then he actually ended up, in the end, he went off one way and I went off in another and just had guides. And we're walking around, and I said, hey, is it okay if we live here? Yeah. And they said, yeah, because they're not thinking of the Bible. They're saying he's going to come in with money. He's going to come in with medical. He's going to come in with teach our kids how to read.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Yeah. So they look kind of, what can we get out of this?
Yeah,
family?
but we understand that.
Which is great.
That's
you got a lot more to give.
Huh?
You got a lot more to give.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Little did they know.
Little did they know, but they understood that. I mean, we understand that they're not. They you always hear these people are wanting the Bible to come in. I'm always a little bit skeptical because what they're really looking for is they want some money to come in. They want some help in the tribe, financial help them to feed, which you can't blame them.
Understandable.
You can't blame them.
Right. Yeah. So thinking about your dad now a little bit, Jim Elliott, that's kind of contemporaries. Is that some contemporary stories there with the Jim Elliott?
What year was Jim Elliott? I mean, I know the story.
In the 60s.
I thought he was was it the 60s?
I thought he got killed in the 60s. Yeah.
Okay, so yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was that a fear you guys had? Was going into some of these places, and are we gonna live?
I actually literally didn't even think about it. I believe.
I think the Lord really protected us a lot. I was talking to the lady at lunchtime, and I told her, I said, when we get to heaven, I think God's going to have a special video set up for us and show us how many times that he protected us and the kids.
I was as scared about snakes as I was about anything when I first went in.
Okay.
I mean, having grown up in the Philippines, you learn to be a little bit more aware of your public surroundings and stuff. I just think that's a normal missionary kid, just being more alert, because you are a target because you're white, and that's inevitable. And you just learn to be a little bit more aware.
Streetwise.
So
you guys go in and you're they gave you a piece of property, or how do you?
We paid for a piece of land.
Oh, you did? Okay. I've seen pictures of your place.
we did pay for a piece of land. It's just like, did we get it that cheap, really? But we helped that family out a lot anyway. So we helped, but
it was a good relationship.
And so we built an initial house, because the tribe we worked in are semi-nomadic or nomadic, so they didn't stay ever. Like when we first moved into the tribe, this is true. So we moved in, and there were a number of families around us, and then one night, somebody had a dream that somebody died in our house. Everybody left. We didn't have neighbors for 3 months. Our closest neighbor was a 15-minute walk away for 3 months. And that group never came back and lived there because of that dream. And then somebody did die at our house later on. Of course, that's not,
we weren't there.
She got bit by a dog and died of rabies, literally. Okay. So anyways.
So you guys were home on furlough?
We were on furlough,
yeah. And they're like, see, type of thing.
Yeah.
It's like, so they associated with that. That was kind of interesting.
So something you talked to our Sunday school class today about is when you go into a village or anywhere, really, you're trying to give them enough knowledge about God and humanity that they would understand their need for a savior, right? So what are some of those key doctrines you're trying to? You can't go. You could go through the whole Old Testament, but that would take a long time. So how do you kind of work your way up to the cross? What's the progression there?
I think you got to think, okay. And even in this day and age here in the States, I would almost say this is true. I would say this is true is
because of people's lack of.
We assume there's a lot of assumption of what a person understands. Right. So first of all, and I get this because I've done this multiple times in churches. What do you need to know to be saved? And everybody goes, you need to know you're a sinner. Isn't that like way down the list of things you need? First of all, you need to know there's a God. Being a sinner, but it means squat.
What is sin?
And, what is sin, and who's? And then if you think about it, and everybody points that out, it's like, but I've never run into somebody who says I'm perfect. Everybody will agree that they understand they're a sinner, even in the tribe. They understand that they might couch it in different terms. Everybody makes mistakes. Nobody's perfect. However, they're going to say it. Yeah. So the issue isn't the fact that they're seeing themselves falsely. They see God falsely because they're saying that's okay with God. So they're misunderstanding who God is, and because they misunderstand who God is, like for example, and so what do you need to know about God? That God is that there is a God. He's the creator, which means he's the owner. And that kind of kills that whole concept. I even brought this up in Sunday school. When people say, my body, my choice, that's biblically incorrect because God's the owner. You're not the owner of your body. Right. God is the one that gave you life. God's the one that gives it to you. Therefore, you are actually going to answer to God what you do with your body, including what you put in your body or what you decide, whatever the case may be, right? So there's a false view of God, and because there's a false view of God in regards to that, I can lecture on this forever. There's a false view of God in regards to ownership. That's where the issue is with pro-choice or pro-life. So in a sense, but that has to be understood at every level. Because God is my creator, I am going to answer to him. It's not like I can do whatever. Right. I don't have license because God is the creator. In fact, I remember teaching the tribal guys, one guy, I'm like, hey, whose water buffalo is that over there? And the person's mine. I said, no, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. I know that's not yours. And they were getting so mad. Yeah. I'm like, okay, did you give that thing life? And then they laughed because it was in the middle of teaching. Yeah. They go, you're right, it's God's. Yeah. Right. Therefore, you answer to God for how you treat that. Yeah. Right. And so God is creator. So we answer to God. God is everywhere, knows everything. It means that nothing can be hidden from him. And how does that translate to the cross? Because somewhere down the line you're looking at he paid for our sins, right? And so there's a lot of people that believe, oh, God doesn't see what's going on or doesn't pay attention to what's going on, but he does. He's right there with us because he's all, omniscient, omnipresent. So that needs to be an understood thing. I actually believe that's a part of salvation. And the other thing is, and this is where I think a lot of cults get messed up, is God's not bound by time. Because they say, okay, God paid for your sins up to a point, but after this, you better be good. Here's your hoops.
Right.
Because they're not seeing that God sees Christ's death right now at the same time, seeing the sin that you're going to commit the last day before you die. Right?
Yeah.
But because he sees all that, and it's on the cross with Christ. And I'm not saying Christ is perpetually on the cross. I'm just saying because God's not bound by time.
Right, yeah.
If that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So these are things we need to understand about God so I've got to introduce God before I even start talking about sin, because you better have a good view of God, or you're not going to know everything.
We still don't,
but you're going to, here's some fundamental things that we assume people understand. Right? And I think because that's mistaught, the gospel is misunderstood. That Christ died for your sins, was buried, rose again. Because there's such a flawed view of God.
So your first aim is to teach them about the nature and character of God.
That's correct.
Yeah. And then where do you go?
Well, we teach what is called chronological. I'm sure you talked to the Hartmans about this.
Yeah.
All right, so you're familiar with that. But what that's doing is it's covering that, who God is. So our initial was who God is, and then we talked about the spirit world, because we are working with animists and stuff. And so the spirit world of Satan, and where do angels, where do demons come from, fallen angels, because this is also a correction on their cultural understanding of the demons. And creation. And here's an interesting one. So in their world, in the people we worked with, there's certain birds that are bad birds. Okay? So, and I'm teaching that God created the heaven and the earth, but we've already talked about Satan and said God's the only one that creates. Everybody else makes. That's a very important distinction, right? Everybody makes.
Yeah.
God's the only one that creates. And they didn't actually have a word for creation. It was caused to be, we had to use the word caused to be without any origin. Because they just didn't have a word for create. So, anyway, so we're talking about creation and say, okay, so who made the hornbill? Oh, God did. Who made the pig? Oh, God did. Who made the deer? Oh, God did. Who made the python? Oh, God did. Who made the manipit Satan? So, it's like, well, wait a minute, let's go back through this. Because what it is doing is it's attacking their very ideas of culture, of their very belief system, just at creation. Right?
Okay.
And so starting with creation, and then man sins, and the promise of Christ right from the very beginning. And then talking through the and working through the Old Testament, they're always, God accepted these people because they believed in the Savior. They didn't know much about him, not like what we know, but they did. God promised it, Genesis 3:15, and then he pictured it through the sacrificial system and all the way through to the Old Testament. So we didn't hit every story. We're just hitting the key ones that we're talking about. The lamb, the sacrificial system, all the way to the death, burial, and resurrection, or all the way to Christ, and then presenting Christ, and John saying, behold the Lamb of God. So they've been taught about the lamb, and they go, oh, this is the substitute. Because I use that word substitute
a lot.
1,000 times.
So I think sometimes it might be easier in that system because they're actually butchering their own animals. I don't know if they had a sacrificial kind of system in their religion, but like here in the Western culture, like to talk about an animal sacrifice, like that is so bizarre to people.
Right.
So removed, and even to think of a slaughtered lamb, it's just. We've just removed. We're such a clean culture, So I don't know if that.
In that sense. But I mean, the thing is, and this comes down to then, what is a person's philosophy? And this is another part of missions I didn't even begin to touch on. But when we're going to be working with people, what is your actual philosophy of how you believe that God works through your teaching? Do you believe that do you have to do it right? Do you have to make sure you say it the correct? I don't, because I believe God's word doesn't come back void. I think he works through us and in spite of us. I don't, So in a sense, I understand what you're saying, and yet the whole concept of substitution is all through the scripture, So that's actually how I've taught it here in the States. And people, and you're right, it is so far removed from people.
Yeah.
But yet it's so soundly doctrine. It's so sound.
Right. Yeah.
You just can't avoid that, right?
Yeah.
So we just trust that God works through us in spite of us, and you know.
Yep.
So.
Yep. And there's a lot of words we use in our culture that are still tied to the gospel, like credited righteous, right? We have credit cards, right? We think we understand some of the terms, but that atonement is I think it's hard. You have to give people an initial understanding of some things before they're going to understand.
It's funny that here in the States there's a whole lot of Christianese in churches. I didn't have any. So we didn't have Christianese verbs. We didn't. Why? Because it just didn't exist.
In the language that
in
you
the
went
language.
into, there was no.
So when we're talking about righteousness, or justification, or sanctification, and all these, I had to go look it up and say, okay, how am I gonna? Fellowship is another one. What does fellowship mean? They don't have a word for fellowship. I go look it up. Okay,
donuts and coffee.
How is this going to work?
So we're still unpacking a lot of words.
How do you go about teaching these? And so that was a huge plus. And then when I came back States, I'm like, I can hardly speak English. But one of the things I determined was I'm not going to present a word without telling you what the word is, because you just can't assume anyway, right? So if I'm going to use the word holy, I want people to understand what holy is, or what's repentance. This is what repentance is, and so because in the tribe had to do that all the time, and a lot like righteousness was clean breath, for lack of better.
Okay. Was there any Bible? Was there any books translated in Dumaguete, or did their language go into the Philippines at all? The initial language you learned, was that?
David's folks did translate some of the Bible, a few of the books. They wrote the orthography, which is the alphabet.
Okay.
And literacy program that we benefited from. We didn't have to do any of that. They did all that for us, all that groundwork.
Okay.
We did try to introduce that Bible, but the language had changed so much since they had been in.
Okay.
That now, when we were trying to use it, they laughed, some of them, because they didn't use it. It's like they would say, that's how my grandfather used to talk, So it changed that much.
Yeah.
It was like this King James 1611 for them type thing. So and because language changed so fast, and let's say the average person takes loosely 12 to 15 years to translate the New Testament. When I went back and I was talking to these guys here not too long ago, and I talked about the rainbow. I used the term I learned in the language. And the young lady, she was about 18, said to her mom, "What's that?" And they gave them the word that's being used now. Why? Because the language is changing that fast. So to do a translation was a moot point, because so we used the national language translation, and they're very good in the national language.
Okay, cool. So you introduced these concepts to these people, some Bible truth, and then kind of how did the church, 3 churches you guys help plant there?
Yeah.
So how did that go? How did that work?
So I guess I'll answer this.
Go ahead.
What we do is you do this chronological teaching, teach about 3.5 months, and finish with literally the day of the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. Now, I've never invited them to a meeting. I always went to them.
Okay.
We never sang, never prayed in front of them, because I didn't want them to think we're doing a religious thing.
Yeah.
This is just personal opinion, but this is just the way it went.
Okay,
so so when we finished, I said, okay, I'm done. Okay. I said, now if you guys want to continue learning more about God now, you come. I'm done going to you. Okay, so what are you going to do? I'm going to go fishing. What are you going to do? I think I'm going to go hunting. That was the response. All right? The next Sunday, they were all there. And they're like, yeah, tell us more.
Okay. So something happened.
So something happened, God changed, and we're not doing invitations or anything. It doesn't work in the Philippines by any means, because of the shame culture. But it was like, okay, we want to know more. We want to know, and they just grabbed onto it and went with it, and God just changed their lives.
Yeah.
And it was incredible. The first few years were just like, oh my goodness, God just took it and he just changed lives tremendously. They're the ones that got the second church going.
Yeah. Okay.
And they're the ones that basically got the third church going.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, we did the teaching, but they're the ones that, because of their testimonies,
Yeah.
people were like, I want to know what you know.
Yeah. Okay.
It was incredible.
Wow. That's really neat.
Yeah.
How was it with the men and the women? Was there, I've heard some missionaries where it's easier to get the women to come because they like to have tea and sit and talk more. Did you have that experience, or was it kind
It
of
was pretty mixed.
the men were pretty easy to get to know too?
Oh yeah.
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 Very much. It's more of it's not a real strong patriarchal society. Women have just as much say as men anyways.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that does make a huge difference.
Did they ever think you guys are coming in to like bring American culture to them? Were they concerned about that? Like, these people are going to make us Americanized?
No. No, but we had a lot of pushback because they thought that we were going to steal their land
Okay.
and we were gold diggers.
Yeah. Like, what's the
Literal
motives?
Literally.
Gold
Yeah.
Gonna,
Did they have gold there? Was there?
Yeah.
Were they?
yeah.
Yeah.
And they would hide it in
There's a story, yeah.
Yeah.
their huts and
So that's they thought we were there for that.
okay.
So
They know
we
about
were
our gold.
we were there for gold, that's for sure. Yeah, we were there for gold. Their souls.
Yeah.
You know. In the mission, New Tribes Mission, they used to have a publication called Brown Gold.
Okay. Nice.
So,
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay, so you guys were there for 25 years. Okay. And they're nomadic people, so were you continually being introduced to new people? Were you guys nomadic? Like, what kept... That's a long time.
The Philippines is a small country, right? So there's jungle, there's not a lot of jungle, and civilization is encroaching. They were nomadic, they were hunter-gatherers. The philosophy or the culture was still there, but there just wasn't that much more to hunt and gather.
Mm-hmm.
So they were starting to settle down. Plus, when they became believers, because initially you focus on everybody, so the mission focus is broad. Anybody that wants to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Then it goes down to, now I've got church. Now let's get you guys going out.
Yeah.
Right? But they had a desire to be there.
Okay.
And then we didn't bring in livelihood projects until people became believers. Then we brought them in. And we had
So it would be a livelihood project.
we had them planting vegetables.
Okay.
Or whatever the case, but that would be like, for example.
Okay.
But that's what we had. Other missionaries have been able to do coffee trees or whatever the case may be to get them to stay in one place.
Yeah. Water
And
treatment.
to make enough to eat.
Hygiene. Yeah. Okay.
Right. And then of course Adriana's doing hygiene. Adriana did a lot of that,
Okay.
teaching them hygiene. Just simple thing like, hey, drink water. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
People were getting dehydrated in a country with 150 inches of rain a year.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So when we think of hunter-gatherer, like we think of, I think of like guys in our church that are hunters and they wear camouflage and they go out and get their animal. Are they, because they grew up, like that's their way of survival. Like, are they like professional hunter-gatherers, and then our people, the hunters here in America, are like,
Yes.
like,
Without a doubt.
like,
The span is so huge you wouldn't believe it.
yeah.
I literally watched a guy hunt by smell. Without a doubt.
Yeah.
He's like, there's a pig there. It's going over there. Starts hunting him by smell. Smell,
Yeah.
not tracking.
Yeah.
They're phenomenal.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. But there's a huge
And
difference.
then what
when
would
you
they
got-
get the animal with? Like a bow and arrow or a
No,
spear?
they're very practical. If you can get a gun or a bow and arrow, which one would you use?
Right, right.
So they got a gun.
They got guns. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to put that on podcast because it's illegal over there, by the way. Yeah.
But they didn't have silencers. You could hear the guns,
Yeah,
right?
shotguns.
Yeah, shotgun. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
No,
Okay.
it's probably over there. I don't know. You might want to think about that one. But anyways, yeah.
Okay.
So-
And then, so 25 years there,
Mm-hmm.
and got to see the Lord do some awesome things, and it's so cool. It'll be neat to see how this transitions into the future and into glory, and we'll
Yeah.
have a lot of time to talk about these kind of things in heaven, right? It'll be
Yeah.
really neat. So let's transition to what brought you out of the jungle of the Philippines and brought you back to California.
I was not feeling well for a long time. I had breathing issues. Very
Okay.
important. Be able to breathe.
Yeah.
I would come into the tribe, and after a break, we'd go out for breaks. And usually our breaks consisted of buying groceries in Manila.
How long was you guys had to travel quite a ways to get there, right?
We would hike out.
Hike out for how many miles?
We were 13 years in one location, 13 years in another location. The first location we had, how many miles? 13 miles one way?
Maybe 13 miles.
One way to get out to a road. So that was our place where we had the kids and they were little. And the second location, I just had a hard time. David thinks it was something that was growing there that wasn't in the first location.
Okay.
And just struggled.
Like an allergy or something.
Something, yeah. We never did
That was
understand
about
what
8
it was.
miles, but
yeah.
a lot more dicey.
Yeah.
Like a lot more dicey.
Yeah.
So.
I'm sorry, there's just one spot we would come and you just have to inch your way along a cliff. And
Literally,
it's about 30,
you've got your fingernails. It was enough for your fingernails, and maybe this much for your feet.
It's only 2 steps.
And then you would grab vines, and then there was a roaring river down below you. And I swear, I would have nightmares the night before that hike.
Yeah.
Every single time without fail. Lord, please don't let me fall into the roaring river. It was very scary.
So the way there, but you had to bring groceries back, right? So
Yes.
So you had to get back over that little spot.
Our first location, we had an airstrip. Our airstrip, so the pilots would bring in our groceries.
Okay.
David very many times carried very heavy loads on his back on these. He's an expert. You ask him which backpack to buy. He's an expert on backpacks.
And shoes.
He carried a lot of our food. Mm-hmm. And so that was the first place. Our first place did have an
pack
airstrip.
Animal or anything? David was the pack animal?
Yes,
okay.
that was David.
And the travel people.
Yeah, we had help.
Yeah.
You pay them a little bit to help out?
Oh, yeah, I paid him, yeah.
We didn't have a lot of money sometimes, so he had to do a lot of the back and forth sometimes because we couldn't hire people.
Yeah. And the kids were at school, so you couldn't use their
We still had the kids at home and they were hiking.
Okay.
Our kids hiked from 4 years old.
Because I just didn't want to carry him anymore.
They're
hard to carry a load of food.
Yeah.
And then somebody singing on your shoulder. Just really annoying.
Our kids were great. So we would hike in and sing songs. Steve Green, Hide 'Em in Your Heart. Mm-hmm. And that's how we made the walk was always a lot better when we were singing. And we would stop for lunch under a tree and okay, it's lunchtime. Okay, and everybody had a hat and sunblock, and everybody had great shoes to wear. Hiking shoes. We always wore tennis shoes. We didn't have boots.
Yeah,
they were always great grip, good grip, tennis shoes.
But, yeah.
So then get back to the first place had an airstrip. Second place did not have an airstrip. So we hiked out, but then eventually we had a heliport because they were phasing out the airplanes, and so now we had to have helicopters get us in and out if we needed.
Yeah.
I was just sick all the time. I'd have to go out to Manila, sit in the guest room, air conditioning, to be able to breathe. There's a lot of humidity in the Philippines, and et cetera, et cetera. It just got so bad that I would come in healthy, and then within a couple of days, I was back to not being able to breathe very well. Using my inhaler a lot, was on a lot of medicine, a lot.
Yeah.
And then David just said, hey, maybe it's time to pull out.
Yeah. So you did. And did that help your breathing quite a bit when you got out of there?
Yeah.
Coming back to States, yeah.
Yeah,
now?
I was a lot healthier, yes.
How about with your kids? Did you have some kids that like, hey, I love being here? And the other kids are like, let's get out of here. What are we doing, Dad?
No,
they were all cool.
Our kids all loved it.
Yeah, they loved it.
It was a childhood paradise.
Yeah.
Yeah, our kids loved it.
Our kids, we'd be there and they'd finish their home school and then we wouldn't see them until the evening.
Yeah,
they're gone.
Play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's more freedom there than here, by far.
Right.
You wouldn't do that here, would you? But you can do it there.
Yeah. We let our kids go. We're probably different, but Windsor's kind of Mayberry a little bit. We feel pretty safe with them going out, but a lot of kids are just on their devices now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, we didn't have that. This is pre-devices, right?
That was not.
Besides,
that was not allowed.
We didn't have any of that stuff. Right?
Yeah. Is there any technology there now? Because you keep going back. You go back twice a year now.
Yeah, 2 times.
Is there some tech in there now, or are they still?
Cell phones.
You can get cell phones if you're within signal, but where we live, there's no cell phone.
Right. Yeah.
You have to go out to town to get a cell phone signal.
Do they have like any solar, any kind of
They're
electricity?
just now starting to come in. There's some company came in with some solar stuff, but tribal people don't take care of them just because it just wasn't important. Stuff's not important to them.
Yeah.
They're the least materialistic people in the world.
Yeah.
You give them something, and the next day you see it, and it's on they pitched
The
it.
little
Like
kids
they forget their slippers
touching
all the
buttons.
time.
Yeah.
because they're so used to being barefoot, for
Yeah.
example. It's not an issue.
Are they? Have you seen any? How do I say this right? I don't say progress, but are they kind of the same now as they were?
No.
There's been some changes,
huge change.
within the culture.
Yes, huge change.
Yeah.
They're closer to the road, so they have more access to things like motorcycles.
Okay.
And so then that was a huge problem. Because
Yes.
they don't have regular jobs with regular income, so they're signing up for these contracts to buy these motorcycles.
And they don't understand finances.
Yeah.
They just didn't have it. What's taken us 150 years took them in 20. So imagine 150 years going from no electricity to vehicles
Right.
to what we are now.
Yeah.
That happened to them in literally 20 years.
Okay.
So they haven't been, and that's one of the big things I keep going back. I have to explain, watch out for this, watch out for this, watch out for this.
Yeah.
This is coming. And they're like, yeah. And the last time I go, and they're like, we're having problems here. And I'm like, I told you.
Yeah.
But you don't see it because it's just beyond them.
Yeah.
It's just so hard.
Yeah.
Right. So, but there's huge. One of the things is they were a tribe that was scared of everything. That's what animism is, and they lived under fear. And then when you get saved, all of a sudden they weren't scared.
Yeah.
They were willing to stand up and proclaim and say, no, I'm not going to be scared of that. Well, that actually is really spelled over into life, But that's not always good. They're not scared of things they should really be scared of.
Right, yeah.
So, now that roads are coming in, you have pornography coming in, you have a lot of drink coming in. They were always drinkers. It's just that it's a whole lot harder to carry, a fifth, 13 miles on top of 110 pounds for a guy that weighs 110 pounds.
Right.
You're just not going to carry that much alcohol. So they'll get wasted for a night or two, and then
Yeah.
they're good for until they walk back out to town. Well, now it's always available.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you got alcoholics. So there's things and they're just not thinking through things like this. So,
Yeah. Let's jump into. So you came home. Your kids are in San Diego, right? They all kind of settled in.
All except one who's a soldier.
Soldier, okay. And in the American Army, assuming.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. So they settle in San Diego. You guys come back, get some healing, and then what happens from there?
Go ahead.
Okay, so we looked around. We looked for missions, what we were gonna do, and.
Do you think, as a guy, you're like, am I marketable? Like, can I have a job? Like, what am I going to do?
What is
now?
my skills? I know how to walk in the jungle. I can build things in the jungle. I can speak another language. Nobody speaks that here.
Right, yeah.
I can speak a couple
It's almost
languages.
like what a soldier comes back home and then now what am I going to do type of thing.
Yeah.
Mentality.
But what did I do? I know ministry.
Yeah.
I thought,
Ministry in the States.
Know about backpacks and shoes.
And I know backpacks and shoes. Maybe I should work for REI. Anyways, I know how to walk. Maybe I should be a guide up there in the Sierras.
Yeah.
Anyways.
We actually thought about that. We thought about setting up some kind of a resort in the jungle and then touring tourists through there. Remember that?
Yeah, I did. Because I
Just
thought we could make, but anyways.
Yeah, except
this
for
ecotourism stuff.
We have a
Big issue.
missionary that's in. I think I'm okay saying this, but they have a mission near where Star Wars was
over there in Morocco.
created, and so they have a tourism business as part of their mission. Yeah.
Yeah, and in a closed country as such,
Yeah.
that would make sense. And we
Yeah.
know missionaries in Indo that have ecotourism and stuff.
Yeah.
So anyways, we came back and thought, okay, let's get involved in, let's become let's go with this mission. And they put pastors into churches that can't afford a pastor. So it was still a supported position. And you go and try and develop the church fundamentally. And so that's what we ended up doing. And they assigned us to, we sort of gave parameters. This is where we want to be near our kids. We've been away from our kids for, long periods.
Did you look for that, or did somebody approach you and say, "Hey, I've heard you're off the field. There's another mission." So how did it come about? How did that relationship?
I had seen it through something else.
Okay.
And so I just.
I think somebody met one of the other missionaries had mentioned it years ago, long time.
So we looked
So we
at it
heard
and
about
stuff. So we
Yeah.
looked at it and said, yeah, okay, maybe this is feasible.
Okay.
And so we went ahead and applied, and we got accepted, and they assigned you to a place, you don't pick it.
Okay.
And so we just said, here's the parameters. Like if they had assigned us to the East Coast, we probably would have said no, because I was like, I've been away from our kids so much in my life. I want to be near the kids.
Yeah.
So at least we were in the same state.
Yeah.
And so they assigned us to up there near Truckee.
Okay.
In a small church.
Yeah. And that little church in Sierraville, they're like, what do we do? Our church is ready to die. And they reached out to this mission agency, or maybe they were part of the same denomination.
No, it's not non-denominational.
Okay. So they had to have a connection there.
Right.
Too.
And so they reached out and they asked for somebody to come in, and they waited there's somebody that was in there, and they left after a couple of years. They got recruited to another church, and so then they waited a year, and then they assigned us there.
Okay. So there was somebody already there that was kind of from the same mission.
Right. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And they still said, let's keep working on it.
Yeah.
There's maybe there's some hope there, but what'd you guys find? What'd you go into?
Interesting. It's a different. For the podcast, I don't want to say too much,
Okay.
right? Because
Yeah.
what if they listen to it?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, because we talked about that. But so back to whatever. It was interesting walking into a church and guys that did not know the scripture didn't even understand the gospel.
Yeah.
Fundamentally. They did. I mean, literally, the one guy said, I thought I knew the gospel. I don't think, I never really truly understood it. Because I spent my first 6 months was doing chronological teaching.
Yeah.
And they literally were shocked that you're enemy of God. That just blew their. How can you be an enemy? God loves us all, you know. And it's kind of the universalism, I think it's called.
Yeah.
That thinking, and it's like, no, you know, like killing a lot of things. God doesn't just want you to be happy. That's not scriptural.
Yeah.
God doesn't love you just the way you are. That's not scriptural. You know, that's why He sent His Son to die.
Right. Yeah.
Because He doesn't accept you the way you are.
Yeah.
You know, things like this where it was there seemed like to be a lot of unscriptural ideas we had to
Do you think they were moving towards universalism as a church? Do you think that was kind of the?
I think it had been there.
Yeah.
So, I think the pastor that was there before us did a good job to get them started.
Okay.
Some.
Yeah.
I think there were a few people that listened to him, but I think as a whole, most of them were not believers to how I view that church.
Yeah.
They didn't even, most of them I'm like, why do you think you're a Christian? And I only got what I believe was 2 legit answers. And the rest were like, I believe in God. Well, what do you believe about Him? He's nice. He loves me. Okay, that doesn't get you in heaven, you know.
We just did a 2-week series on unity, and so I wanted to look back at our church that I grew up at in Forrestville, this little church, and so I watched one of their services out there, and the opening, they're doing Zoom church, but their opening was they took a hymn, can't think the name of the hymn, and somebody had rewrote the whole hymn to make it a universalistic hymn. And I thought, man, what a weird deal where you take truths about God in a hymn and then take it to humanity.
Right.
And now I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Like, why would anybody even go there? I just didn't understand, like, what's the draw? Like, anyway.
Well, that's the good church to go to because you walk out feeling good about yourself because it's human-centric.
Yeah.
It's never God. That's the biggest issue we've seen in the U.S. is what can God do for me? He fills my life. He gives me joy. He gives me peace. It's all about me, me, me.
Yeah.
Instead of I'm here to glorify God, and it may not look great, and it might be uncomfortable, and it's not going to necessarily give me money or give me tremendous. I might have to go through some seriously hard stuff, but the point is different. It's man-centric versus God-centric. And I think the problem in the churches in the States today is they're so man-centric. You know, God just, that big push, God just wants you to be happy. That's man-centric.
Yeah.
You know, how come I'm not happy? And then you blame God.
Right.
And then they say, how can you be happy? And then they come up with your little formula to be a happy person.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with glorifying God.
Right.
Type of thing. But
Yeah.
I can go on a spiel about that too. Because it's just one of those things that just shocked me when I came back.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about in the church a little bit today how you, as a missionary, you leave for how many years, and then come back and go, whoa, what happened to America? Yeah. So you're up in Sierraville and just having a hard time. And yeah, we don't need to go into all the details, but what are some things you learned from that experience?
What did we learn?
And are there times when you're like, because I know Jill and I, sometimes I'll be struggling in ministry and just discouraged because, we have ideas of how we want things to go and how we hope they would go, but you're dealing with all volunteers and you can't make things happen. A lot it's just the Lord has to do certain things. What you saw down with the Dumaga people, and so sometimes with I'll be discouraged and Jill will be a great helper and just encourage me, and then sometimes she'll be discouraged and I can kind of come along and help her and just kind of help her see like, the Lord's using us, like this is where he wants us to be, so was there that?
I'm not really like a person that gets super discouraged. That's just not, I get annoyed.
Okay.
That's just another term for discouragement, right? I get more like, why can't they get it?
Yeah.
What can we learn? There was a period of time we almost went to Italy.
Okay.
We had a chance to go to Italy, and we decided not to go. And we were, it looked like a real good thing, and we would have been working with Filipinos and in Italy.
And they were asking us to come over.
They were asking us to come over. They wanted to do an interview and all this sort of thing. And we decided not to go. And then it wasn't long after that the Lord had us get involved in somebody's life, a couple's life, and
while you're up in Sierraville.
Yeah, while we were in Sierraville.
Yeah.
So sometimes, and you think about Philip, he one guy, and it literally takes up half a chapter. The Ethiopian.
Yeah.
And you don't. God's not into numbers. We're into numbers.
Yeah.
God. That's not the issue with God. And I've always hated that question of how many people have been saved. I don't know because I'm not God.
Right.
Anyways, and how many. So I needed. I guess what have I learned is just like even in this most frustrating times, and it's kind of like. You always tend to compare with what we were coming out of the Dumagats, where people love the Lord. The Dumagats know more scripture than most Americans do. I'm sorry, but those guys know their stuff. You're just like, we have these whole doctrinal discussions. They don't know chapter and verse because they can't read very well, but they're like, major discussions that are hilarious and they're fun.
Yeah.
And you come here and you deal with that. And it's like, if there's anything I learned, I appreciate American pastors a whole lot more. I really do. I didn't when I was over there. I do now. Physically, no. We had it much harder over there, hands down.
Yeah.
The spiritual side of things, I actually believe it's harder here. I think I've started to appreciate American pastors who love the Lord, who really want to walk with the Lord.
Yeah.
And I think I can see where the frustration is. So I think that was one thing that probably God changed my attitude towards that. And then also, I don't know, God took care of us the whole time. And it even's like, nothing's happening, this has been hard. I guess if anything, we just learned I've got to learn to be satisfied with what we have here before God.
Yeah.
So
we were faithful.
we didn't go there with any intention to quit. This is until we die, or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's just, and we you know what? It's time for us to move on. And maybe.
How about you, Adriana? How did you feel about how things were going, and did you have similar?
David was very frustrated, and that hurts.
Yeah.
To watch your husband go through it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I knew it was time to go, and the Lord just prepared us.
Yeah. Yeah. But you were there to encourage along the way, and hey, let's just keep being faithful. And,
our kids laugh at us because we hang out all the time.
Yeah.
They just go, Mom, you guys are together 24/7. And we go, yeah, that's called being married.
Yeah, we like being together.
They laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. What would you tell, so that mission agency that sent you to that church, have they asked you, like, should we send somebody else back? Like, what would you, after you experienced that, what would your counsel to the missionary agency be? And the reason I ask that is because it's kind of a loaded question, because we're seeing churches, we talked about this, we're seeing churches close left and right. Even in Windsor, we've had a few churches close over the last couple of years. And so it's like, when do you just say, you're better off merging with another church, or you're better off, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, how do you navigate that? I don't want to be like the mortuary of churches, like.
Right. No, I understand. I think, and I actually do think God shuts down churches.
Yeah. Well, in Revelation, right?
In Revelation, if you're ineffective, if you're
take your candle,
I'm going to remove you, right?
Yeah.
So we see that.
Yeah.
There's some people in that church that really love God, some new believers.
Yeah.
And they're struggling in life. Do they need somebody? Yes. The thing is, and this is a really hard one to think through, but there are decent churches within 13 miles, which in the country, you drive 60 miles to Reno to go shop. Right? So 13 miles is nothing.
Yeah.
It is nothing.
Yeah.
So should they merge, or shouldn't they, or should they just hang on where they're at? I'm not going to be the one to make that call. I think that's something those guys need to make a call on.
Those guys being the church there,
the church,
or the mission agency?
The believers. No, I don't
Church.
think that mission agency has any say in it.
Yeah.
Quite frankly,
Yeah.
I think
should be a local church.
They need to make that decision.
Yeah.
Are we viable? Because are we viable? What's the mission? What is missions?
Yeah.
The missions is Matthew, 28, 19, and 20.
Yeah.
Make disciples of all nations. Are you doing that?
Yeah.
If you're not doing that, why are you existing?
Yeah.
And if you're not doing that, then is there any purpose to meet? If you're not willing to do that, so maybe you should merge with a church that is doing that.
Yeah.
And that's the hard call right there.
Yeah.
Because church to meet for church is a moot point if you don't have a mission focus. Yes, the church meets a lot of needs. I'm not saying that.
Right.
But the mission is still the mission.
Right.
And we look at that,
yeah.
and this is the mission.
Yeah.
And if I'm not doing that, if that is not my ultimate purpose in this church, and all we're doing is getting together and having a few songs, and we do a little bit of communion, and listen to some guy mutter for about 40 minutes, and then I go home, and then back to the same thing. Well, there's not much point to be in a church, is there? Because you're not doing anything.
Right.
You're not functioning as God intends for you. So should you hang out or not? And that's a hard call to make, and does it happen immediately or right away or whatever? Not necessarily. So you give that time, because growth takes time, but yet to not do anything. And I'm not saying that church doesn't do anything. All I'm saying is that's when you got to start looking is a church viable, And sometimes God does shut churches because they aren't viable, like in Revelation.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
That's a really hard call to make. That's a really tough one to make.
It is, yeah.
So.
Yep. So, yeah, because we're struggling with some stuff around here, and even the church that planted us, back in the late '60s, I don't even know if they're still a church down in Petaluma. They had a big campus, but they've went from 500 people to 10.
Wow.
But they've had another people group come in. I think they had a Cambodian or Vietnamese group come in and start using the church and as a church, gospel centered. So, yeah, it's interesting times. So
we just have to trust. When I look back, was it a failure what we did? Well, if our belief is, and Adriana keeps bringing, she's the one that encourages me. If I didn't have her, I would have been gone a long time ago. But we have to be encouraged, and I have to believe that word. My word does not come back to me void.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you read the next verse, and sometimes it's snow, and sometimes it's rain. So sometimes it takes a while to filter in. Sometimes it comes in. Can I walk away saying, well, at least I've taught truth? And every time I look at Acts, when Paul's talking to the Ephesians, and he's saying, I'm leaving, but I can tell you, I taught you truth. I taught you all truth. I did what I could do.
Yeah.
That's my responsibility. How they respond to it, I think some people did. Some people didn't like what we had to say, but that's okay. Having enemies is never a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. It says leap for joy, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. Truth is gonna do something when it goes out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit annoying when they're kind of mean.
Yeah, I think the beauty of our church is they wanted the Bible, So when I came, just preaching expositionally, and that's what they wanted, and then that's when people come in, they get saved, they understand the importance of getting the Word and being built up in the Scriptures. So I kind of came into something that needed, some help here and there, but you had a really strong group of people that were very committed to the scriptures and prayer. And so, yeah. All right. So what's next for you guys? So I know you had to read off the thing, your new philosophy, where you're going.
Our new job. Yeah. I always have to look, because I've got to see it. This is fundamentally how we understand our jobs. So we applied to this new mission, started looking for missions, wanted to get back into missions, possibly go overseas again, whatever the case may be. And I found this, it came up on the net in a weird way. And I was looking through all sorts of missions. I contacted multiple missions, asking them fundamental questions. Like, how do you handle your money? That's a big one. How much do you take off the top? That's also a really big one. What do you expect? This, that, and the other, asking them their philosophy on missions, because I've been a missionary long enough. I sort of know, we sort of know what we would and wouldn't work with, right? Mm-hmm. And, we want to agree with them doctrinally. Can we work with somebody, say, that was charismatic, say the church, the mission's really broad in who they accept type of thing. So, but then this one comes up called Disciple the Nations. Never seen it before, never even seen the ad since. Which is, you kind of go, okay, so God must have put this in our way. And so I said, this is what we did. Who are you? Literally, I was like, who are you guys? Yeah. And he writes back immediately. And it's a small mission this guy started. It's called Disciple of the Nations. His name is Dustin Meadows. He's got a real heart for missions. And so he answered us immediately, and then we started corresponding. And then I said, let's go ahead and we talked about it, and we went ahead and applied. And pretty long application, actually. Haven't ever answered any of those questions before, that's for sure. But some things I could write up and say, what does this mean? I don't even know how to answer this, And so we got accepted, but because we're experienced, which is kind of funny, because I think, we're experienced in making a whole lot of mistakes, But because of our experience in church planting, and not so much, I don't want to teach methodology so much as let's talk through principles. I want you to think through principles. We're going to sort of be on the ground floor in our understanding of helping people through church planting principles, through language learning principles, through culture learning principles, and just being a help as well as an encouragement. And at the same time, I'll still be going back to the Philippines and involved in the ministry there. And we might be traveling. So in essence, that's what we're going to be doing because of what we've experienced. And hopefully even, I sort of want to get into church, talk to people in churches and say, this is what missions is, because I think there's such a misunderstanding. Hey, just go over, tell them about Jesus, and they get saved. And we were there 3 weeks, and 4 churches got planted. And you're like, type of thing. And just get involved with helping missionaries get started, because we train for everything. You train to become a pastor. It doesn't happen in a day. Well, missionary works hard, and it's in another language, and it's in another culture. And
you have to go far, far away.
Yeah, and you have to deal with a lot of things, including incredible culture shock. So we want to be an encouragement as well as just help people through, they might run up on problems with church planting and language learning, and how do I get started? What do I do? Well, we've done that. Yeah. I can tell you what not to do, probably, as much as I can tell you what to do. Yeah.
So this new agency is called
Disciple the Nations.
And they're kind of a startup agency?
They've been around 2 years.
2 years, okay. Right. And how many missionaries are they?
They're involved. They've got missionaries in Portugal, Costa Rica, Guatemala, Malaysia. So they're basically starting out right now.
And who's the guy that's running it?
This guy named Dustin Meadows.
Okay, was he like an entrepreneur?
No, he was actually a pastor and a missionary in Central America for a short period of time.
And just saw let's start something new.
He wanted to be involved in a mission because he'd been with other missions. Yeah. And he saw weaknesses in other missions that he wanted to avoid. Okay. And so he came back and said, we want to be involved with a mission that encourages people. And we want to be a big help to get them going, but really
survive, because there's so many that quit.
Yeah, Because the
So many
And stick to it.
agencies quit, or so
No,
many
the
missionaries
missionaries.
quit?
the average
Quit.
missionary quits after, I think it's 7 years, I believe.
It's longer than a senior pastor.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think we're like 2.5
I was at
years.
5, so
Yeah,
I beat the mountain.
doubled it. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
okay.
So that's where we're going with this, and
Okay.
we don't know exactly what it's going to be like because we've never done this before, you know. So I mean, we'll see how it works out. But our goal is to be an encouragement and to be a help to missionaries. And,
Yeah.
you know, how that's going to play out, to be honest with you, I'm not exactly sure. But
Okay.
that's where we're at.
Look forward to seeing how it works. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll leave with this question: what do you like to do for fun, Adriana? Besides
I don't know.
talk to David, what do you like to do?
Grandkid.
Yeah,
You like
I
your-
talk to our kids.
Hang out with the grandkids? Yeah. Cool. How about you, David?
We both work out just to try and, I don't know
Yeah.
if that's fun because it's tiring.
That's true. Yeah.
I like to walk.
Okay. Hike
Yeah, okay. I like
or
to
walk?
hike.
I think of walking as like on the street.
Well, I just call it walking because it's.
You're walking up in the
No, I
hills.
just we walk. I have a
Yeah.
dog. I like to walk, and then love to be in the tribe.
Yeah.
I like sports.
Yeah.
I just like activity.
Yeah. Being active.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, awesome. It's great having you guys. Thanks for, I don't know how long we went. 3:47, hour and a half about. Yeah.
Okay.
I think. It's good. Yeah. So thanks. We'll call that a wrap, Jake.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was
Thank you,
fun.
Lance.
Yeah.